Welcome back to Singleness, Dating, Marriage, Gospel. And today we come to toward the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7, verse 1 through 6. Judge not, that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite. First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. Now, verse 1 here has been ripped out of scripture, ripped out of context, just for people to use to defend living however they want. And no one can say anything. Oh, don't judge or you'll be judged. But is that what Jesus is saying here? Well, note this. Jesus is not commanding us here not to judge, but rather he is teaching us how to judge wrongly, how to judge rightly, and knowing when to stop. So again, Jesus is not saying don't judge anything. He isn't saying not to judge. Jesus uses this language a lot. Even earlier on the Sermon on the Mount, he says this, do not resist an evil person. Does that mean I just sit back and let someone break in my house and murder my family and do nothing to resist them? Or I'm breaking the scriptures? He says, do not call anyone on earth your father. So do I have to call my dad, but if I call him father, then I'm sinning? No, that's ridiculous. See, we cannot just take verses out of context. See, Jesus says these things and then explains what he means. So let me read it again. Jesus is not commanding us here not to judge, but rather he is teaching us how to judge wrongly, namely with the log of self-righteousness in our eyes, how to judge rightly and knowing when to stop. So, what does this have to say to us who are single, dating, married, and Sorry. So, listen, males and females who are single, dating, and married, we must be diligent to rightly judge those the Lord has placed in your life. Approach them humbly as a repentant sinner with gentleness and genuine care for their spiritual well-being. And if they remain unreceptive, know when to step back. At that point, don't address the issue head on, but rather encourage and pray for them. Now that's a lot. Let me break that down. So first, be diligent to rightly judge those the Lord has placed in your life. So not only is Jesus not saying don't judge, he's saying we must judge. Remember, he doesn't say, oh, just leave the speck there. No, he says, okay, make sure you remove the speck from your own eye and then remove the speck. He doesn't say just leave it there, worry about yourself. No, Jesus is teaching us how to judge. He's teaching us how to do eye surgery, as it were. Now, no eye surgeon just shoves his hand in there and tries to pull something out of your eye or whatever. No, it's very gentle. And that's what we'll get to in a second. But he's saying, again, I read, be diligent to rightly judge those the Lord has placed in your life. You know, in the book of John, when they're judging Jesus, Jesus doesn't say, hey, don't judge me. He says, you judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. He says earlier in chapter 5, he says that when I judge, it's right because I don't seek my own will, but the will of my Father who sent me. So we should judge seeking the will of God. We should judge with righteous judgment. So be diligent to rightly judge those the Lord has placed in your life. Listen, approach them humbly as a repentant sinner with gentleness and genuine care for their spiritual well-being. So we must approach them not with the log in our own eye. What's that log? Does that just mean any sin? Well, it definitely includes sin, but No one, not you, not me, no one can completely rid their lives of all sin. If Jesus was saying, hey, if there's any sin in your life you can't judge, then no one could judge. But we've already established that in what he's saying. What is he saying? He's saying, remember, these are the religious leaders, and how did they judge others? They judged others self righteously, like they had no issues, like they had everything right. We are not to judge like that. So we remove the self righteousness from our eye by coming to them humbly, realizing that we're a sinner. Come to them as a repentant sinner. In other words, come to them as someone who hates sin, who mourns over sin, who turns from their sin, who clings to Christ. Paul says this in Galatians 5:1. He says, if anyone falls into sin, you who are spiritual, go and restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you be tempted. It's like, realize you're a sinner, go to him gently. Remember, we're doing eye surgery, and we need to be very gentle, lest we cause more pain when trying to remove that speck, more unnecessary pain. So, we must be diligent to rightly judge those the Lord has placed in our life, approach them humbly as a repentant sinner with gentleness and genuine care for their spiritual well-being. If they remain unreceptive, know when to step back. At that point, don't address the issue head on, but rather encourage and pray for them. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says, do not give what is holy to dogs or cast your pearls before pigs. Why? Lest they trample them under their feet. You give them the precious pearls of the gospel and they just trample them like a pig. They're not worth anything. They just trample them under their feet. They just argue, lest they turn and tear you to pieces. They get angry. They're pigs. They prove themselves to be pigs and dogs when you go to them as a repentant sinner with gentleness and genuine care for their spiritual well-being, and they trample the truth of God under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. Know when to step back when they're unresponsive. However, we don't just step back and say, okay, that's your problem, I'm leaving you. No. What do? Read it again. At that point, don't address the issue head on, but rather encourage and pray for them. We continue to pray for them, and we seek to encourage them to live a life of holiness. Not addressing the issue head on, lest they trample the precious truths of God under their feet. The truth of God is too precious just to throw out for them to trample. But we continue to encourage them in holiness. We continue to call them to Christ. We continue to magnify Jesus Christ before them and praying for them for that specific issue especially, and who knows what the Lord may do. Now, what's the gospel in all this? Listen, Jesus Christ gently and lovingly deals with our sin after he gave his life to forgive them. And we can show our love and gratitude for his dealings with our sin by the way we deal with other sin. See, Jesus Christ came into this world. And because of our sin, he came into this world and he laid down his life and he shed his blood that there might be forgiveness of sins for all those who would look upon his death and trust in his death alone and live their lives for Jesus Christ, believing in him that he was the payment for their sins, that he is the forgiveness for their sins. I hope you have done that. But Jesus Christ didn't just do that and leave us. No, even now, he lovingly and gently deals with our sin. Because you still sin and I still sin. But Jesus comes gently. He comes lovingly to deal with our sin. And when we go to others and deal gently and lovingly with their sin, we are showing our appreciation for Jesus Christ and the way he dealt with us and continues to deal with us.